Okay, welcome viewers to this video. I just wanted to open up this video with uh, giving thanks and giving glory to God Almighty, Father of Jesus Christ, who died for your sins and saved you, and He's the Redeemer if you know Him. And viewers are probably wondering, why is this guy saying this? So just for the viewers to know, this is a video on what I like to call a deck detour. You're probably wondering, why do you open up with saying those things? Maybe he's a Christian. And yes, I am a professing Christian. And although this video is kind of connecting Magic the Gathering to Redemption, the card game, and the viewers are probably wondering, what's Redemption? So Redemption is a collectible card game actually based on the Bible. It plays a lot like Magic the Gathering. But what this video covers is, I used to be a Magic the Gathering player myself many years ago, and this video pretty much covers how to take the concepts or elements of a MTG deck and convert it into a Redemption deck. And today's theme is the Mercenaries theme in MTG back from the Mercadian Masks block several years ago. So I have a visual reference here on a Magic the Gathering Mercenaries deck, and then I'm going to show you a visual reference on a Redemption deck that I believe contains the same sort of theme, the same idea, the concept, that sort of thing. So if you're a Redemption player, awesome, you can, and you want to have a deck that kind of plays similar to Magic the Gathering, this is a good reference. Or if you're a Magic the Gathering player, and let's say you're a believer, and you never heard of Redemption, I strongly encourage you to, give Redemption a shot, look at it, research it, look it up. I think it'll greatly aid you in your faith, and it's just as much fun, just as um, level of strategy, and many other sort of things that are comparable. So, okay, so we have a Mercenary deck here. So as you can see, some of the cards, we have some black mercenary creatures. They have their respective strengths and toughnesses. A little bit of hand destruction. We have the fear ability here with this guy. I'm not going to quote cards by name because that's not the main purpose of this video. But here, this guy searches for other mercenaries, this enforcer guy. And then if we scroll further down, you have these kidnappers. Once again, he searches for mercenaries. This overlord, he regenerates. So important to understand, he regenerates. So in Redemption, there isn't much of a concept of regeneration other than healing and maybe recursion. So when I show you the Redemption cards, you're going to see that same sort of element in the deck. So this guy also searches for mercenaries. This summons searches for mercenaries. Coat of Arms. Now, fortunately, Redemption does not have a card similar to this, so we're kind of out of luck. And another mercenary with drains life, or whatever you want to call. We have an element of removal by making a player sacrifice a creature. Then Haunted Crossroads recurs creatures. And then we have this fiend here, another mercenary flying. And then Phyrexian, I think Delver. I can't really read it too well. Nonetheless, another mercenary. And then the assassin mercenary who searches, as well as an element of removal. We have this intimidator, another mercenary who searches. That's got I think fear attached to it, so it's hard to block. And then smother, another element of removal. So I apologize if it's pretty quickly or if I went pretty fast. This is just kind of like a brief overview. So now I'm going to go over to the Redemption version of this deck Detour, I like to call it. So of the few artifacts we have here, we have 30 pieces of silver, which can be placed inside the Sadducees Palace Fortress. So this is your evil protection fort that protects your Sadducees. But as you can see in the identifier, it holds 1 active Unholy Writ or 30 pieces of silver. So you can put this inside that fortress. Also, an element of removal through discard. You have Unholy Writ, an element of removal through capture. Then you have Lampstand of the Sanctuary. It's a layer of protection, which can be held inside Herod's Temple, because it is considered a Herod's Temple artifact. And we also have the Bronze Lever. It's an artifact that lets you put evil cards beneath your deck and you draw that many number of cards. And here the identifier says a temple artifact. So yes, it too itself can be held inside Herod's Temple. And back to the artifacts, you have Golden Cherubim, another temple artifact that lets you search. So every time an opponent draws, you can search your deck for a card. And it being a temple artifact can also be held inside Herod's Temple, thus freeing up your artifact pile to have other artifacts active. So High Priest Palace, you can put the 30 pieces of silver or Unholy Writ on it, either one of the two active. And then Herod's Temple, you can either put Lampstand of the Sanctuary, Bronze Lever, and Golden Cherubim, one of the three active on Herod's Temple. Then you have your artifact pile. So you could technically have 3 artifacts up and active at a single time during your turn if you have those 2 fortresses in play, which gives you a nice edge over your opponent. And then the New Covenant, it being a covenant, or you can use it as an artifact face up. So when it's active, it can heal, which will resemble the element of regeneration as you saw from the MTG deck, as well as it returns captured heroes to your territory, and it discards evil cards on New Testament heroes, and it gets underdecked, so it itself recurs itself. So it's a really good addition to have in this deck. So now to the dominants. I guess some pretty standard dominants. I don't think they really follow the theme too much, other than the Second Coming searches, and then Shipwreck, because you're going to need it to get rid of any challenging forts or sites. Christian Martyr, it's an element of removal. Son of God, every deck must have that. Destruction of Nahustan, artifact removal, and Mayhem. It's you can draw cards with this, so it helps speed the deck up as well as mess over your opponent's hand, to kind of resemble the element of hand removal like you saw in the Mercenary deck. But one thing you won't see is this deck doesn't really have too much hand destruction. Then Grapes of Wrath, again, more removal. Okay, so now to get into the meat and potatoes, I think the defense is the star of the deck to primarily resemble the theme of the MTG Mercenaries deck. So starting with the enhancements, Pride of Simon basically recurs in Black Brigade enhancement from your hand, and you can replay it. Everyman's Sword, multicolored removal enhancement that's warrior class. Yes, there is a single warrior class brigade evil character in the deck where you can put this on and it'll stick in combat. If not, it falls off at the end of combat with a regular non-warrior class character. We have Tenants Kill the Sun, a multicolored evil enhancement that can remove, element of removal, by discard. And obviously you'll meet the requirement because almost every single evil character in this deck is a Sadducee. And then we have the Stoning of Stefan, interrupt the battle, which is good. It's fast because it interrupts the battle. Decreases a hero by XX, where X is equal to the number of evil Pharisees and Sadducees in play. And then if the hero is New Testament, you do it twice. And then it cannot be prevented if it's used by a Pharisee or Sadducee. So this is also an element of removal. Then you have Hunger, also, again, another element of removal. It decreases all your opponent's heroes 6/6 until the end of turn. Doctrine of Levin. Okay, so remember how Haunted Crossroads in the MTG deck would recur your creatures? Well, this would kind of be one of the strongest resemblance of that in this deck. What it does is you set aside a Pharisee or Sadducee and then decrease it 1 in toughness each upkeep. So that means your upkeep and your opponent's upkeep, you can search your discard pile for a genetic evil character of the type that's set aside and put in your territory. So obviously this deck has majority Sadducees. So even if you have one generic Sadducee, the 1/3 Sadducee, this card is worth it, because that means for 3 turns you can recur 3 of your Sadducees. So this card is awesome. Plus it's a set aside enhancement, so you can start doing it on your prep phase or discard phase. Moving on, we have Scattered, a battle winner that cannot be negated. The only thing that's tricky about this is, although it's multicolored, by default it doesn't carry black. It does have gray. So there's only 2 characters in the deck that can play this card, which would be Scribe and the Sanhedrin. So you're probably wondering, why would I run this card? Only 2 characters can play it. Well, if this card doesn't play too smooth for you, you can always replace it with another card called Abandonment, I think it is, which is multicolored, black, gold, and it almost does the same thing. So if you don't like this one, you can always go to Abandonment. And mind you, this is Old Testament, and there's going to be a reason why. And then the next card, Devourer, Old Testament, interrupt and discard evil enhancements in play. So it's kind of like removal, not exactly. It does remove enhancements, your opponent's good enhancements from battle. But it's kind of like a negate. Instead of interrupting and negating, it's interrupting and discarding. And you may want to notice the Old Testament reference, because there's a reason why. All right, moving on into our characters, we have Sadducees. There's 1, 2, 3 generic Sadducees, right? And then we have 1 Scribe. So look, his ability says search discard pile for an Old Testament enhancement and place it beneath deck. Negate, ignore abilities, which is not too important. Then you can ban to a Pharisee or a Sadducee. All right, so although he can only ban to a singular Sadducee, only 1 guy, while these other Sadducees ban to all, mind you, this guy recurs. So Scribe can underdeck a few cards in this deck. This Everyman Sword can be recurred. Hunger can be recurred, which is mass removal. And Scattered, mass removal. That can be underdecked. And your Devourer can be underdecked. And then through Pride Simon, you can recur 1 of your New Testament black enhancements if you really need to, such as either Tenet's Kill the Sun, Stoning of Stephen, and Doctrine of Levin. More than likely, you'd probably want to save it for Doctrine of Levin. So back to characters. We're on to the Sanhedrin. This guy's nice. He's a little fatter, bigger in numbers than the other Sadducees. And he can ban to a Pharisee, Sadducee, or a Scribe. So you can ban to this guy or 1 of your generic Sadducees. But this guy is pretty good for this reason. There's 2 High Priests in the deck. High Priest Ananias, who searches your draw or discard pile for Sanhedrin and put it in your hand. So you can recur this guy with High Priest Ananias. Okay, so then Captain of the Temple Guard, the 1 and only warrior class Sadducee in the deck. So you can put Everyman's Sword on Captain of the Temple Guard. And High Priest Ananias, I already mentioned what he does. Okay, High Priest Caiaphas. You may search draw pile for a High Priest Palace, which is their fortress, or a Sadducee and put in your territory. Interesting enough, this High Priest and this High Priest both search for Sadducees, kind of like the same concept in the Mercenary theme with the MTG deck I showed earlier. It's just High Priest Ananias searches for the Sadducee, searches for the Sanhedrin guy and puts it in your hand, while High Priest Caiaphas puts it in your territory. He looks for Sanhedrin. This guy looks for a Sadducee and puts it in your territory. Both really good. Fishing boat. It's awesome. Good fortress. It goes to set aside. Each upkeep, you can place one of your heroes from fishing boat beneath your deck to draw X, where X is equal to the number of your disciples. Or you can give your disciples access to all sites. So if you're kind of locked out, if your opponent restricts you from rescuing lost souls through sites, Fishing Boat will help you there, as well as it will accelerate your deck. Herod's Temple. Now, cool thing with Herod's Temple is, mind you, it says you're New Testament human. So that means it's going to work for both your offense and your defense, because both the offense and defense are New Testament humans. So with Herod's Temple, you can recur your disciples and or your Sadducees, but it's going to come at a cost. It's kind of hefty. So every time a New Testament human is discarded by a special ability used by your opponent, you may discard a card of Matching Brigade from hand and the top X cards of your deck instead. So, and X is the number of your redeemed souls. So this card is good early game, or at least if you're not winning the race for rescuing the most souls, because the more souls you rescue, the more hefty the price is going to be with Herod's Temple to get back, say, your Sadducees or your disciples. So, you may want to pay attention to that, because in the Sadducees, there's already a few ways to recur your guys within the defense itself, beside the Herod's Temple. So you may just want to use those elements instead, like Pride of Simon, High Priest Ananias, or Doctrine of Leaven, because they're not going to require a hefty price like Herod's Temple. Then we have High Priest Palace. This is the evil protection fort for your Sadducees. Protect Pharisees and Sadducees, evil characters in your territory, from discard. They're pretty straightforward. Okay. Now your good enhancements. Your Reach of Desperation, your Interrupt, and draw 3 cards. That's pretty much a staple in any purple deck. Then Faith is a Mustard Seed. It's an element of removal. If used by a New Testament hero, which the deck is pretty much, interrupt an occupied site, an evil enhancement, or a non-human evil character, and remove it from the game. So it's in here mainly because of the interrupt element. So it's fast. And then Sent 2 by 2. So you negate special abilities on demons. Disciples are immune to demons. And then if a lone disciple is in battle, you can band a disciple into battle. Cannot be negated. You're probably wondering, why is this card in here? It doesn't seem that great. Well, mind you, there's a lot of other disciple decks out there. Probably better than this one, of course. This is mainly for fun. It's, the theme of this video, it's a deck detour. This deck is designed to play like a Magic deck. That's what this video is about. So, Sent 2 by 2. One of the flaws in the deck is the disciples. Only one of the pairs of the disciples in the deck actually search for one another, while the other ones kind of band to each other. So obviously, the strength of the disciples is when they're attacking in pairs. But if you have one and he doesn't have his counterpart or his companion to band to, you can use this card to aid you, and it cannot be negated. So that's always good. And then Pass Over Him, also, it's a hint of removal. Negate and discard X curses or evil enhancements in play, where X is equal to the number of disciples or musicians. It's also a territorial class enhancement, so you can play it on your prep phase or discard phase. Continuing. Then we have Authority of Peter. Remove an evil character from the game and top deck a hero from your discard pile. So it has an element of recursion, since I think the defense recurs better than the offense. That's why this is in here. Then, of course, Authority of Christ. Discard all evil characters in play, and it cannot be negated. So that's must be in this deck. Testing Solomon's Wisdom. You're probably wondering, why is this card in here? Regardless of immunity, underdeck a human A human, yeah. Place a human beneath deck. So it could be your opponent's hero or evil character. But, if you use it on an evil character, it just may become a battle winner because this card cannot be negated. Okay, so moving on. Great Faith. This is basically an exchange card for an enhancement. So the disciples, although they don't really search too much for each other as compared to the defense, this card it's meant to help find you your enhancements that you need. Now moving on to the heroes, we got Bartholomew, who negates special abilities on cards with the word false or lying or deception or deceit in the title, and then it protects disciples from conversion and capture. So Bartholomew's companion is Philip. Philip searches for Bartholomew and can ban to him, and it cannot be negated. So with Philip, you rescue and then search for his companion Bartholomew. Then you have Matthew, who draws up to X cards, where X is equal to the number of disciples in play, but the maximum limit is 3. Or you can search your discard pile for a good enhancement with a Matthew reference and underdeck it. Okay, so I already covered Philip. Then there's Thomas, your 7/7, who bans to Matthew, and enhancements used by Thomas cannot be negated. His ability itself cannot be negated. So, his companion is Matthew. If my mouse works, there we go. Matthew and Thomas band together. All right, then we have Andrew. Andrew is the brother of Peter, so he bans to Peter. And I'm using the I version instead of the other versions, mainly for the card draw. But they do not search for each other, unfortunately. Then you have James and John. They're companions of each other. Neither search for each other, but James does ban to John, and John negates evil characters, so that's that pair. Then the 7 Lost Souls, we have the Revealer that reveals the top 2, so kind of help accelerate the speed of the deck. This Lost Soul, I don't know, I forget what it's called, but it's good, if your opponent uses a good search, look, reveal ability, you can basically search your deck for an evil character or an evil enhancement, add it to your hand. Then this card negates banned abilities by your opponent. And then we have, I think, the Lawless Lost Soul, which is basically the Reveal Lost Soul on steroids. Instead of the top 2, this guy does the top 6 with a little bit of a restriction. And then this Lost Soul, if it's rescued, you may search your discard pile for a hero. So also to help you recur some of your heroes, since I feel like this deck doesn't have enough recursion. And then this one searches for New Testament Lost Soul in your deck. So if you draw this one first, you can basically fetch out this one or the Revealer, because they're both New Testament reference Lost Souls. And the last one's this guy, when it's rescued and he played an evil enhancement, you discard all rescuing heroes. So it's, an element of removal. And there's one site. We have Corazon, which protects your New Testament evil characters in your territory from conversion. So it's another layer of protection, because the High Priest Palace protects your Sadducees from discard, but not conversion. And then Corazon protects your Sadducees from conversion. And then you have other things like Herod's Temple that can kind of recur them. I used to have Marketplace in this deck, but I figured that was a little bit of too much. So anyways, that pretty much covers the video. So the viewers, so you guys know, again, this is a deck Detour. I just showed you a redemption deck that's meant to play like a Magic the Gathering deck. Its specific theme is Mercenaries. So if you're a Magic player and you're looking to play redemption, but you want the decks to be more consistent, I would recommend following this template or framework that we're sharing with you today. I feel that it plays very consistent and smooth flow, so that it kind of gives you that flavor or theme, right? Or if you're a redemption player and you want a deck to kind of play like a Magic deck, you can also reference this video. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching, and all the glory be to God.